Welcome back to Growth Over Goals. I'm your host, Jordan Montgomery, and today I am with a woman who's known as the female Jerry Maguire. Check this out. She has done over $500 million in negotiated contracts as one of the top sports agents in America. She's a best-selling author, a dynamite keynote speaker. She's a mom, a wife, and a force for good when it comes to personal development and leadership. Her work has been seen in Forbes, USA Today. Just watched a clip on her this morning on CBS. She's been on some dynamite podcasts. I just watched a conversation with her and Ed Milet, who's also a mutual friend. And just to watch these two go back and forth and talk all things personal development and leadership was one of the most inspiring moments of my month. She is none other than Molly Fletcher. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Wow. Jordan, I'm going to have to take you on the road with me, man. Thank you. That was very kind and humbling. Thanks. It's great to be with you.
Well, your reputation precedes you. And it seems like every time I go to an event, and I just always love asking the question, like, who have you had serve your audience, as a speaker that you've been really impacted by or impressed with? And your name just continues to come up, over and over, Molly Fletcher, Molly Fletcher. And I know we share a lot of mutual friends in common, but we just recently met, like literally, a few minutes ago, and we were connected by our good friend, Jess Ekstrom. And right before this, I was having a conversation with John Gordon. He's like, oh, you're going to love the time with Molly. And so it's a joy just to be able to share this conversation, to learn from you. And I just want to say thanks in advance for impacting our audience and spending some time with us today.
You bet. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I want to go to your background because here's the deal. I know today you're serving a broad range of people and different audiences really through events as a dynamic, in-demand keynote speaker, but your journey starts years ago in the sports world. And I want to go back to when you were like, Michigan State University, thinking about your future, and your dad's a farmer rep and he's a Zig Ziglar fan. And you start thinking, man, I got to learn from Zig. And you've got this great story about how you tracked Zig down. And I want our audience to hear that. So can we start there, Molly, with today's conversation?
Absolutely. Sure.
All right, let's do it.
It's certainly relevant. Right. So yeah, my dad was a pharmaceutical sales rep, and which his office was in the basement of our house. And I had two older brothers, and who were pretty much most of the time pounding on me upstairs. And so whenever I could escape a headlock, I'd run down and see my dad in his office. And, on the corner of his desk were these books by a guy named Zig Ziglar. And I would read them from time to time. And I thought, this is so cool, right? Like you can take in information and it can make you show up better. And we'd throw the cassette tapes in the car on our way to practice or school and listen to them. And so when I was approaching graduation from college, I wanted to meet him. And so I literally, and this man is a legend. But I start sending him letters and postcards and phone calls, blowing him up, his assistant, Zig, everybody. And I was sort of fascinated by the speaking space. I tried out to be the commencement speaker and finished second. But, I beg him for 6 months until finally, I peppered him consistently. And finally he said, all right, I'll give you, let's do it. And so they gave me 20 minutes in his office in Dallas, and I saved up my money, bought a ticket to Dallas, fly in to meet with him. I'm so excited. I'm 20 years old. I'm a total and complete, like the fact that he took 20 minutes was so kind. But I sat down with him, and I think what was really cool was he sort of leaned forward, and as I had asked, I'd love your advice. I really think I want to do what you do one day. And I just love what you do, and I love how you do it. And he leaned forward, I'll never forget it. And he said, Molly, I think this is a great thing. It's good to have goals. It's great to have dreams and be ambitious. But my advice is this. He said, first, why don't you go out into the world and do something, like anything? And he was so humble and kind in his delivery, but then after you do that, maybe you can go back out into the world and talk about it. And, the truth is, it was pretty underwhelming at some level. I spent $200 of my hard-earned money to fly to Dallas and meet with him. But what I loved as I reflect on it now in life is he was so right. Just go do something. Go do something, and then maybe you can talk about it. And it's this thing that I'm so passionate about, which is this inner drive that we all have the ability to tap into. And I think in some regards, that's what Zig was saying, is go unlock your drive to do something. And then maybe that something can serve others one day. So it was a fun moment and a cool story.
Well, I wanted our audience I wanted our audience to hear that, Molly, because I think especially as an emerging leader, there's so many who aren't willing to do what other people have done. And in your case, I think your story embodies that quote, if you want to have influence others don't have, then you have to do things that others don't do. And then I think about, I want to fast forward your story a little bit. You get into the sports world, and I don't want to skip over any, really important. You're like, hey, our audience needs to hear this. But I love this story where you're in Atlanta and Georgia Tech's in your backyard and you're a sports agent and you're like, I'm going to crack into this thing. I'm going to do this thing differently and I'm going to get my hands dirty. And you end up actually like going down to the ball field and like hands on, like doing things again that other people don't do. So can you walk our listeners kind of through that chapter of your life and specifically that story?
Sure. Well, when I got to it, I moved to Atlanta to try to get into the sports space because I'd grown up in East Lansing, played tennis at Michigan State, loved all of it. But I thought, I'm going to try to move to Atlanta because the Super Bowl was coming, the Olympics, all of the sports teams, pro teams. So fast forward, through a myriad of sort of odds and ends sports entry level roles. And then I got an opportunity with a small agency. And my role was I was essentially Lenny Wilkens' driver, driving him all around all of his Olympic appearances. He was the head coach of the Dream Team. And after that ended, the Olympics ended, I was sitting in my little cube and I'm thinking, man, because we had Lenny Wilkens, Chuck Daly, Mike Fratello, and a couple other baseball players. But it was really, NBA coach heavy. And I remember sitting there thinking, how are we going to like grow? Because the reality is getting more athletes, coaches under contract where we're negotiating their contracts was critical to the growth. And so I jumped up naively and walked into our leader's office, small team, small group, et cetera. And I was like, what's our growth plan? And he literally was like, what do you, and I'm probably standing there, right, Jordan, in a pair of pink pants or something. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, like, how are we going to grow and get more clients? And he said, well, referrals. That's how it's worked. I mean, Lenny referred Chuck referred Mike. He goes through it. Yeah. And I said, Georgia Tech's right here. The Braves are here. I mean, like, we've got a couple guys. Like, what if we got a little bit more aggressive? And he stared out the window for what seemed like a month. And he turns back and he goes, you know what? If you can figure it out, knock yourself out. And so I started with baseball, and I would, as you said, and I didn't know, I didn't go to Tigers games as a kid. Like, I did not know baseball really. And so I had to learn so much of it. And I would go down to Tech and lean on the fence with scouts who were chewing tobacco and bubble gum and, parents and coaches and all of it. Yeah. And literally, and sort of had to almost elbow my way into that spot on the fence and then learn the language. And I did, and I sort of signed a few guys that year and a few more, and it just continued to grow over almost 20 years. But yeah, it was about consistency. It was about doing it when not everybody was being as consistent. I think it was about really understanding who the athlete was, getting to know the coaches, getting to know the scouts, getting to know the family of the players, but being so consistent in being there, whether it was weekends, nights, raining, snowing, cold, whatever it was. And I think when you do that over time, you build trust and connection.
That's right.
That's right. And so, yeah, that was sort of the kickoff point at some level for so many other things.
Well, I just love that you put yourself in situations where you could have looked silly or, maybe you didn't feel like you totally belonged, but here you are, this young woman just breaking into the sports world, really making a splash. And then because of that, you end up with this amazing career where you served 300 of the best athletes on the planet and represented them in all of their deals and negotiation over their contract. And you say this in Dynamic Drive, and I want to talk about Drive for just a second, Molly, but I think you're so right about this, that the result of your hard work isn't what you get from it, but it's really who you become by it. And so you've become this person that's really helping people understand the essence of drive and why it's so important. So You spend so much time on this word drive. Mm-hmm. And I want to tap into that and just hear from you directly on what does drive mean to you?
Yeah. Well, drive in the traditional sense is this desire to pursue and achieve something. And to me, that is a linear pursuit of something that is not necessarily sustainable. And so I sort of pulled back and said, you know what? In fact, what I saw with my days as an agent was that the athletes that achieved once operated sort of maybe one way or didn't achieve it all. But the ones that did it over and over again, that had sustained high performance, they operated differently. And it was an inside out pursuit, not an outside in. In other words, drive in the traditional sense, you could argue is sort of, I'm going to run a marathon and achieve this external sort of finish line, if you will. Yeah. Whereas dynamic drive and the drive from an inside out perspective is this pursuit of better every day. And I unpack 7 keys in dynamic drive to help people deploy it in their lives. But fundamentally, I think what's important to pull forward, Jordan, is that as an agent, you know, what's always sort of remarkable to me is the fans see with athletes, right, all of the moments of achievement. I mean, the fans see the trophies and the accolades and all, you know, Rory drain a putt recently to win the Masters. I mean, the world sees these big moments, but for me, I saw all day long with hundreds of athletes in hundreds of different sports at various levels in their journey, everything that got them to the point of achievement, what happened with the people and the athletes that didn't ever get there and why, what happened once they achieved, and then the ones that went to the Hall of Fame and did it over and over again. And it is a very different approach to life. And so I think what matters at some level, even for the people listening, is to recognize that the things that I saw great athletes and coaches tap into was a choice. And we have access to the exact same things. We have access to the mindset, the discipline, the curiosity, all of that. Because what I think is remarkably interesting is that, you know, when you see these incredible athletes do incredible things on the court, course, or field, you think, well, they were, you know, it was a ton of talent. Well, talent might get you drafted, but it is not going to keep you or get you to the big leagues even. Yeah. And, you know, and they're not born with it, and it isn't luck. So then what is it? And it's this inside out approach to drive and the pursuit of better every single day inside of a very purpose-centered pursuit, by the way, also. Knowing why you're grinding, if you will, is critical to continuing the pursuit.
When did that click for you, Molly? Like when you think about, and I've watched your TED Talk and you unpack, you know, drive versus talent. But what was the moment in your career where you said, this is really it? This is the distinct thing. Was it early on? Did it take you a while to really put your finger on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah. I mean, you know, I think, Jordan, there was a point probably 7, 8 years into my career where I thought, wow, like I'd hang up with Ernie Johnson, who's bookending, you know, the Mad Dog guys, right? Not the Mad Dog, that's a bad analogy, but, you know, he's got Kenny and Barkley. I mean, it's unbelievable. I'd hang up with him, and then I'd be on the phone with Smoltz or Doc Rivers or, you know, Tom Izzo, and I'd be like, or like a minor league, right, first round guy or a golfer, and I'd be like, they're all alike. The ones that actually get there, they're all very similar, not in what they do, but in the way they behave, the way they take feedback, the way they recover, the way they shift negative self-talk to positive self-talk. And I think it was a combination of a lot of conversations and moments with high performers in very different spaces. And then I left the agent business in 2011 and have been, you know, speaking, consulting, coaching, podcast, et cetera, for the last almost now 15 years. And I see the same thing in business with high performing leaders who are doing it in a way that is sustainable and relational in their approach. And I think that came together to be this real ownership of drive in a little bit of a different sense and a different approach that I really want so badly for everyone in the world, truly, anyone with a heart and a soul and a heartbeat to tap into, because I think it's a remarkably interesting way to live our lives. I think we have an
Yeah.
opportunity to show up as our best self and truly to leave a legacy
Mm,
that, we are only most uniquely positioned to leave. And I
that's right.
want, if I can be a small part of helping people tap into that, I feel blessed
Yeah.
to do
Well
that.
said. Well, I think you're such a great resource and your work resonates because while drive is important to you and you're clearly, very, very driven, you haven't lost your sense of self and you've kept the main thing the main thing. And I think you've learned
Yeah.
to be all in on the things that matter most to you. You have this really unique story about a time where you found out some just kind of crazy news. I'll let you tell the story. And then had to go to a meeting where you really had to be all in. And so I've
Mhm.
admired that about you just in learning about your story, that like you've just looked toward the future, I think, with great anticipation and been a really focused, driven individual while keeping your sense of self and being all in on what matters. So talk to us. I think you know the story that I'm
Yeah.
referencing, but this is
Yeah.
and buckle up because this is a story. If you get nothing else out of this pod, I want you to hear this story right here because this is a fun one. And I told you offline, all the great stories you tell, Molly, this is one of my favorites. So go ahead.
Oh, that's cool. Well, thank you for that. You're sweet, but I would say that there's a lot of people that have contributed to, I think we all need people in our lives that tell us and keep us centered,
Yeah.
be it certainly our faith, but also people. And so I'm grateful for that. But yeah, so my husband and I had our first daughter, and she was about 5 months old. And of course, just an unbelievable blessing. And then I'm coming home from the office and I think, I craved soup and ice when I was pregnant as odd. And I was like feeling that way. And I thought, this is really weird. So I pull into CVS, get a pregnancy test, go home, take it, and it's positive. And I was like, she's 5 months old. And I just gotten, I was sort of back at the office. I mean, you can imagine the athletes start calling after like 3 days after you have it. They're like, dude,
Mm,
I got traded. You had a baby, whatever. I got traded.
right.
So I literally drove back to CVS and bought like 15 more pregnancy tests because I could not believe it. And they were all positive. And so I called my doctor, who's a friend, and I was like, you're not going to believe this. I walk her through it. She's like, oh my gosh. So the next day I go in with my husband, we do the test again and lay down on the little table. And many people have been in one of these rooms, and she puts the sonogram on. And I always joke because there's the chair in the corner for the dude, right? My husband's sort of in this chair, like, and then
Yeah.
she goes, oh my gosh, Molly, this is incredible. She said, girl, you're 12 and a half weeks pregnant. And I was like, I thought, wow. And then I'm like, this is just a
Mhm.
blessing, though. This is a gift. And my husband and I are like, this is unbelievable. This is a lot, but like, this is an absolute blessing. We can do this. We got this, right? Like, I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid. And then after like 2 minutes, she throws another line on the screen and says, Molly, you're 12 and a half weeks with twins. And it was unbelievable, right? But I remember looking down at my watch and I thought, oh my gosh, it's 12:15, guys. I have a 12:30 lunch with Doc Rivers. Like I got a hop. And they're like, huh? Oh, what? And I'm like, dude, I got a hop. He's in town. They're playing the Hawks. He was the head coach of the Celtics at the time. And so I jump up. I'm driving to this appointment with Doc like a maniac. I call my mom and dad just to let them know they're going to move to Atlanta, by the way, at this point. And then I pull up to the hotel and I'm meeting Doc in sort of the corner of the lobby for coffee. And he had a lot going on in his life on and off the court at the time, personally and professionally. And so I walk in and I remember it was a long hallway and I remember stopping and think Doc is very cool, but thinking, do I tell him? Because I remember thinking, yes, he's cool. He also has a lot going on. And you tell somebody you're having 3 kids in 12 months, it's gonna derail the meeting. So
Right.
it was a moment where I really, as much as I represented the athletes and coaches I worked with, I learned so much too. And
Mm.
great coaches will often say, be where your feet are to their
Mhm.
players, to them, be where your feet are, be present and control the controllables. And it was truly a moment where I had to pause and realign on what mattered most in the next 45 minutes and recognize that I could pick this miracle up in 45 minutes, but that I needed to show up, be present, lock in, connect, all of these things. And I needed to be where my feet are for Doc in service of him and pick it up, 45 minutes later. And I think what's relevant about that story in part is that we live in a very busy world with a lot coming at people. And it's harder than ever to be really present. It's really hard, but it's so critical. And I think people can tell when we're present or not. They can tell when we're really there or not. Yes, they can tell when we're in meetings and on phone calls and all these, but they can also, the people in our lives who matter most, I hope, are that we come home to at night. I mean, they can tell, our kids can tell. And so it is a cool visual, hopefully, for people to consider. I'm going to be where my feet are.
Yeah.
I'm going to be present.
Yeah.
And
so good.
It's so important and it's hard. But I remember I literally had a period of time where my screensaver on my phone was be present. Or on my default on my computer screen, be present. Just to keep it, because it's a little bit of discipline.
That's right.
To lock back in.
That's right. Well, I love this story because to your point, you made an intentional choice. And whether you're receiving news that you're having 3 kids in 12 months and meeting with Doc Rivers, or you're dealing with this nagging thing and have to be present at your next client meeting, the point is we have a choice to make it about others or to make it about us.
Yeah.
And I think especially for people who have exponential levels of drive and interest and are motivated. And I mean, we're if you're tuning into this podcast, you're somebody who has drive. There's a reason you're listening. Sure. You want to get better. You want to grow. And so, and maybe you've got something in you where you're going, man, I want to go to the top and I want to, and so then that lends itself, I think, to a personality that wants to share and speak and sometimes make it about yourself. And I think one thing that's worked so well for you, Molly, for so long is you've had this internal drive, but you've made it about others. And I continue to see that in your leadership and how you carry yourself. And even our conversation offline, I just so our listeners can hear this, I'm talking about, hey, Molly, here's some things that you're up to and I want to add value. And here's some things I'm thinking about. And you're like, well, time out. I want to know what's going on with you and what are you up to and how do we add value to you back? And so I just appreciate that about your spirit. And I'm looking forward to getting to know you better, in the days, weeks, and months ahead. And I get to hear you at training camp next month with a bunch of NFL coaches and collegiate coaches. And you're going to be on the stage and I'm just excited to hear you speak live and in person for the first time, although I've seen a lot of your content online. If you were going to leave our listeners with maybe a message or just an anecdote from today's conversation, I'll let you have the final word. What is the thing that you'd want to leave people with, whether it be about drive, leadership, personal development? What's on your heart today or on your mind that you'd love to share with our listeners?
Well, I mean, I think they're here because they're curious. And I would just say, I really think curiosity can create so many chances for us in our lives. It can create so many choices for us in our lives. I think it makes our lives remarkably interesting. And I think we can think about that through the lens of curious about the people that we work with or want to work with, that we live with, that we love, that we serve. And if we can get curious and get inside of their heads and hearts and then serve them and anticipate gaps in their lives, but curiosity about the gaps in the lives of other people. I often tell sales teams, how do you act like you have the business before you have the business?
It's good.
In service of curiosity. So curiosity to me, but also I would say curiosity inside of ourselves around our blind spots, our gaps, things that we can ladder up and level up and do even better. So curiosity to me is it's a powerful thing and it's an empowering thing too.
And I think it lends itself to an open mind and a sense of humility, and how you lead and interact with the world around you. So top sports agent, top keynote speaker, best-selling author, friend of many, mom, wife, and humble spirit, Molly Fletcher, you are a blessing, my friend. So thanks again for being here. I just am so excited to do more life with you, follow your work. Sure. And I appreciate you spending some of your very valuable time with our audience today on Growth Over Goals. Go pick up the book, Dynamic Drive by Molly Fletcher. Follow her on social media, listen to her podcast, Hopefully you get a chance to hear her speak live in person like I do next month in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida. Molly, thanks again. God bless you.
Thanks so much. God bless you. Thanks so much, Jordan. Super fun.
This has been another episode of the Growth Over Goals podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Montgomery, and I want to say thanks again for being with us today. Thanks again to John Choate and his team at Storyline Multimedia for all that they do behind the scenes to make these episodes go. Be well, be great. Have an amazing day.